Today we speak about shamanic healing, some practical techniques and explanation about the main characteristic of the shamanic work, which is connected with the healing. My name is Giada and I'm a shamanic practitioner and teacher. Many times I've been asked when actually did you start to connect with shamanism in a non-official way when I was a child. So my own life, it started in the easy way of simply doing rituals and in a way that I was not even aware that it was a shamanic practice. It was just come natural with me. And being connected with the visual element of the strong element of visualizations, of being connected with images, with spirits at the beginning, not being aware of what was happening inside myself, and then throughout the years digging more, studying, experiencing, going through any sort of initiation and experience, because shamanism is about practical initiations in life. I then started to being more integrated and use that in a way with more awareness of what I was coming to me in a natural way, without being afraid, because of course at the beginning you don't know exactly how to call it, and then you start study, experience, learning, and you understand that actually is a practice that has been done in many cultures, and it's still practiced in a variety of ways. And then I started my school of shamanism, where what was at the beginning just simply shamanic circles and workshops, it became a more structured way of teaching, trainings, to be able to have more healers in the world. I'm just going to explain just very briefly what is shamanism again for those of you who are not familiar with the concept. Shamanism is probably one of the oldest ways to see through our hearts and not our eyes what is the true heart of the natural connection, the link between the visible and invisible worlds. And shamans are healers that work in an altered state of consciousness that can be reached in a variety of ways, go into a journey in the other reality, in the other realms, make changes to then go back and be a tool, a vehicle in order to heal other people, for which they have the spirits working through them. And shamans were described as the first healers, magicians, storytellers, artists, but actually they are healers. They are people that offer themselves with the gifts of healing and the skills that they have, of course, taken with their experience. They offer themselves to be able to do work on people that can happen in different ways and different techniques. And shamanism is probably dates back to 50,000-60,000 years ago. It's quite impossible to say when it started, because at the beginning shamanism started in the tribes, so nothing was written, and it just became there are written tracks later on that have been recorded since then with the revival with Michael Harner later on in life, where they started Castaneda to write down books, to publish more, and then of course in the late 1700s, we have the first time in which the word shamans was recorded in Siberia. What of course is common is that it's pretty much evolved and spread out in all the continents, in all the countries in the world. And the beautiful element is that many of the rituals, practices, ceremonies, sometimes they even have the same name, then maybe the practice is different, is done according to the cultural background of people. But it's beautiful because even without people speaking to themselves, they were able to tune in the same moment of energy and develop practicing, helping others in each corner of the globe. And shamanism hasn't that much changed throughout the centuries, not because it has not evolved, but probably because it works. It works as a practice, and this element of tradition has been taken over and passed on from one generation to the other one. Specifically, I also like when I do a ritual with people, if I know the tradition where it comes from, and there is, for example, an initiation connected to the cultural elements of that traditions, to the group, the tribes, however you want to call it. I always like initiate people first to that tradition and then do the rituals. It's just like asking the permissions to the holders, the ancestors of that tradition, to be able to share that ritual or that ceremony with someone else, and then also being aware that these rituals will travel along and will be passed on into other groups, to other people. But I think it's always important if you know where it comes from, because the fact is that it's quite difficult to know sometimes when people where ritual comes from, because again there is nothing written. In terms of the role of a shaman, of course, the shaman is originally, as I always say, psychopomper, so helping people, helping souls to go towards the light after death. But nowadays, it's also a guide, not of course from the ego point of view, but in terms of, if we think, for example, about the practice that is called shamanic counseling, which is still done through shamanic journeys, helping people to understand and go through their own darkness, and come out with a connection that is truly and deeply vivid with their intuition. So it's not a work that is done through the mind like many other practices, like psychology, psychoanalysis, or the generic and modern version of counseling is not done through the mind, but is done in a cooperation between intuition, because your own intuition, and the universe and the spirits, which are here to guide you, to help you, but then you are the one that needs to decode all the messages and understand all the teachings. The shaman can guide you, the shaman can help you to see and some highlights, but then it's you that you need to interpret all the different true messages that are speaking with you, especially because the images and the spirits always speak in metaphors, in symbols that are not to be taken literal, but they speak to you in general. And then throughout a session of shamanic healing, there can be very different ways that the shaman uses to heal the person. That can be, of course, there are works that are in between extractions or removing energies that are imbalances. They're not necessarily intrusions. That can also be, but normally they are imbalanced amount of energies in the energetic body of the person. Then we can, of course, have soul retrievals, retrieving parts of the souls that left before because of a traumatic experience. We can have retrievals of gifts, retrievals of power animals, which basically are extra allies that are coming into your life to support you and guide you in this specific moment. And then as practical tools throughout the sessions, the shaman can use all the instruments, the two main ones, which are drums and rattles, which have different functions, but they always have the functions to call upon the spirits, and then specifically of the rattle to call upon the spirits to seal and close the work that has been done. Or the rattle can also be used, for example, to shake energies that are stagnant in the person. And then of course we use element like the smudging with the sage, with other herbs to purify. In general, for people that have the knowledge, they can also use crystals for the extractions, and here is always important to have the specific knowledge of that crystal that we are using. We can use feathers, and we can use stones, so we can use sticks, which normally, for example, happens in the Australian traditions. They use two sticks against each other. So there can be any sort of personalized tool that the shaman would love to use is welcome, because it's not like having a fixed guidelines of elements. It's what is actually is calling you, whatever you think that you are familiar with in terms of connecting with that specific element in general. And then of course what happens, there is another video in which I'll explain a little bit more in detail about the shamanic healing session. And then when we close the session, it's always important to have this integration time, which means that then all the things need to settle, all the things need to stay there for a little while. We need to allow the time for the person receiving to allow these new elements to integrate and substitute the old ones, which can take some days, some weeks, some months, years. It depends on the intensity of the work that has been done. So it's important always not to rush into having this expectation of quick and final results coming afterwards. And then also accepting the fact that some physical reactions that normally disappear in a couple of hours and maximum one day, they're absolutely normal, because also when we are receiving an example, a massage, straight away after the massage we might not feel well, because the parts of our body that are painful actually have been touched, shaken, and so we need to wait some hours normally before being able to feel better in general. If you have any specific questions regarding the shamanic healing process, just let me know in your comments so that I can take the opportunity to go a little bit deeper in that element and explain a little bit more.